Are you looking for a wrist pain fix? If your answer is yes, this video is right for you. When you train calisthenics or any of these bodyweight exercises that you do on the floor, it's very easy to develop eventually some pain on your wrist. I'm Adrià from Calisthenics Hacks, and on this video I'm gonna give you 5 super actionable hacks that will help you fix your wrist pain. Some years ago, my wrist hurt so badly that I had to go to the doctor, and that day I learned something that made me take my wrist health much more seriously. I already knew that my wrists were super skinny and that wasn't ideal, but there was something else going on. After I gave to the doctor the typical medical image, she started playing with my wrist and she noticed that when grabbing my hand, she could move it more freely from my arm. And that meant that my wrist joint was not stable and I had lax wrist tendons. This meant that I had to take much more responsibility of my wrist, and from that day I learned a lot of stuff to protect and heal my wrist that I'm gonna share you right now. The first hack is to use contrast bath to remove your wrist pain as fast as possible. If you don't know what it is, a contrast bath is a cold bath followed by a hot bath. The purpose of the cold bath is to reduce your wrist inflammation that you may have developed from the injury itself or from smashing your wrist on your training. And the purpose of the hot bath is to increase the circulation on your wrist that normally there's not much going on there, and this will help regenerate the tissues on your wrists.
So how do you do that? The first thing is to put your injured wrist into a bucket with cold water for 2 minutes. And here I like to make the water as cold as I can handle by adding extra ice. And second, just after finishing the first 2 minutes, I put the injured wrist 2 minutes more into a bucket with warm water, also as hot as you can handle, don't go too hard on it. And when you have finished the first cycle of a total of 4 minutes, you repeat that for a total of 16 to 20 minutes, which is the same as a total of 4 to 5 cycles.
So the second hack is to put your wrist on the right position by using parallettes or your knuckles. The principle behind it is that you can avoid most injuries by just doing them with the right biomechanics, and on that case, rather than doing your push-ups or handstands with your hand extended like that and putting extra pressure, you can just use parallettes and put your wrist on a neutral position, which will be way easier. Also, what helped me a lot personally was wearing a wrist wrap, because this put my wrist in a more fixed position, and then the forces were transmitted more efficiently rather than staying on my wrist and putting extra pressure on it. The caveat here is that if you grip too hard the parallettes, you can start creating some pain in your fingers, and the solution is just to be conscious of when you really need to press so hard, and then when you don't need it, just press lighter. And for those of you who still want to train on the floor, don't worry, I want to do it too. The next hack is for you. The third hack is to do these 3 movements to strengthen your wrist: wrist flexion, wrist extension, and wrist deviation.
Let's cover first the first scenario designed to recover from injury. Here you will be doing the 3 exercises with dumbbells and resistance bands so that you can go lower with the load and do more reps, because the ideal number of reps will be more than 10, like 12, 14, something on these lines. And the key here is to do 4 seconds of eccentrics, which is what will pay you more dividends on recovering. I like to start with wrist extension because it's normally the weaker movement, and then do the wrist flexion, and finally the wrist deviation on both sides, ulnar deviation and radial deviation. Now let's cover the second case. This one is for you if you are just healthy but you want to make sure that your wrist stay healthy on the long run. Here I just like to add this small routine at the beginning and end of my workouts. You just do 1 set of one of these exercises for around 10 reps. You start with the first knuckle push-ups, followed by the wrist push-ups, and finally you do wrist rocks. Also, feel free to adjust the position of your legs from a knee push-up until a regular push-up to regulate the intensity of the exercise.
The fourth hack is to smash your forearms. Sometimes it can be counterintuitive because even though we feel pain on a joint, actually it doesn't come, the root cause is not in the joint itself. We have to look upstream or downstream of the joint. And for the wrist concretely, we have to look upstream to find and attack the tissues that are pulling your wrist and hand, which are the forearms. I personally found that in certain areas on the distal part of my forearm, I developed some knots and points that when I apply pressure, it really hurts and the pain actually radiates to the wrist. These are like trigger points, and the way to act on it is to apply pressure on it, like in a similar way than the trigger point therapy or the active release treatment.
More concretely, I do that by applying pressure for 2 minutes to each pain point. And after the 2 minutes are done, I like to add an extra 30 seconds of pressure, but in a dynamic fashion. This is, I apply first pressure stronger while I'm exhaling, and then I relax while I'm inhaling. And I like to apply this protocol when I'm injured or my wrists are especially sore almost every day. And then on a regular basis when I'm more healthy, I like to keep doing it at least once a week.
The fifth and final hack is to fix your wrist imbalances. You may already know that when you do a lot of bench press and very little rows or back exercises, your shoulders end up with an imbalance, and that produces pain and lots of injuries. So the same applies for your wrists. And I have found 2 exercises and 1 stretch that really help balance your wrist. The first one I already covered in the last section, and are wrist push-ups, because they put your wrist in that position that you normally don't do. The second exercise are wrist extensions, and I love them because they do the opposite that when you do when gripping. And finally, I love this stretch because it stretches the muscles that you use when you grip. And to sum it up, we have seen 5 hacks. The first one was to use contrast bands to remove wrist pain as fast as possible. The second hack was to put your wrist on the right position by using parallettes or your knuckles. The third hack was to strengthen wrist movement patterns of flexion, extension, and deviation. The fourth hack was to smash your forearms. And the fifth hack was to fix your wrist imbalance. I hope that all these hacks help you fix your wrist pain, and see you in the next video.